Good morning. My name's Izzie MacDougall, and until about 18 months ago I was a member of St Matt's Church. But we moved, and I'm speaking to you from one of my favourite places in the garden in the rectory in Chiddingstone, where Bill is the assistant minister working with 3 congregations here. Either side of me is a footpath. Up this way is a footpath going past the house to the Chiddingstone, a geological, historical possibly site where lots of tourists come to visit regularly. Up this side is a really interesting footpath. That way leads to Penshurst, that way leads to Somerden, and it's a really ancient pathway where people over the centuries have moved backwards and forwards, carrying their goods to market, taking their pigs from one den to another den. You'll have heard of lots of names in Kent which have den on the end: Summer Den, Cow Den, Horseman Den, taking their pigs to and fro to market and all the other goods. Really ancient, important pathway. But recently, since lockdown, there is another pathway, a new pathway, and it goes behind me, across the fence here. It's a shortcut from the Penshurst pathway to the Chiddingstone, and over lockdown, as the fence got knocked down, more and more people take this shortcut. At St Matt's, you're covering a series on journeys, and last week Suzanne gave some really helpful insights into the journey of the Magi. One thing I really took away from her talk was that how God often speaks to us through the familiar to us. I love the natural world, and my working life has all been around very young children, their learning and their development. And I realised looking back how much God has spoken to me through the natural world and through young children and what's going on in their brains. Well, as I was preparing and thinking about this talk, which is based on the journey of the Joseph and Mary and the baby, well, the infant, the toddler Jesus, from Bethlehem to Egypt, I sensed that God was saying something to me through the new pathway, that God is creating a new pathway. And out of that story, which you've had read to you from Matthew chapter 2, I'm going to pick up just 3 points. One is around Joseph, one is around refugees, and one, you might not have noticed it there, but around the coronavirus. So, okay, firstly, Joseph. Now, Joseph we don't hear much about in the Bible. We often think of him as being a bit of an insignificant person who only features on the Christmas cards. But he had 4 very significant dreams. The first one was, don't leave Mary, stay with her. But then there were these 3 dreams relating to the journey. First of all, take your child to Egypt, because Herod, the king, the narcissistic king, wanted to kill all babies under 2. Secondly, take your child and your wife now back to Israel. And then thirdly, don't go anywhere near the new leader of the new Herod, because he's dangerous too. Head on up to Nazareth. 3 significant dreams that kept his family safe. Now, some of us feel that we're insignificant and that we're not really anybody, and nobody will ever notice what we do or where we are. It is a lie. Everyone is significant. Joseph was highly significant. Think about that. What about our response to refugees? Jesus, along with his parents, was a refugee. Have you ever travelled a long way with a 2-year-old, a toddler? I have. It's a tough job. And Jesus was still under 2 at that stage. Now, across the world today, there are refugees, including toddlers, trying to flee from tyrannous political leaders who are creating carnage in their countries. Powerful people still threaten the vulnerable. And what is our response to that? What if Egypt had closed its doors to the Holy Family, said, sorry, we can't take you here? What if they'd arrived to find a big wall, a locked door, no way across the channel? What would the outcome be? What if the people and the rulers had said, we're too afraid of this, we can't, and we know that people who come from other countries do harmful things. What if that had happened? What would the story be for us? What would the good news be for refugees? But what would the good news be for you? What would the good news be for me if Jesus hadn't survived? What does that say to us in a post-Brexit country? How are we responding to the negative treatment of refugees and asylum seekers in our own country? What action can we take to bring about respect for all people and kindness to those who are displaced? How can we help to shape the values of fairness, generosity and collaboration in our society and wider world, where we are genuinely all in it together? We need to find a new pathway. And our response to the coronavirus. Coronavirus, as we know, has highlighted the stark reality of the inequalities in our country and in our own local communities. Across this country, the church has been asleep on its watch, and it's our watch that we've been asleep on. St Matt's Church was planted many years ago in the centre of High Brooms, and we all know the needs of this community here. We've all gone to St Matt's, some living in the area, some coming in to attend St Matt's and then going out again. But for all of us, High Brooms is the community of St Matt's. We're not separate from the community. The community are not our outsiders. As a church, we are not called to be exclusive. We need to be partnering with the community, working with them, learning together with them, finding solutions for the short term and the long term, together, collaboratively. A few years ago, Bill and I went to Kerala in South India, and we stayed in the home of Arundhati Roy, her aunt, and we pottered around on the boats, on the waters there, and walked through the forests, which was the setting for Arundhati Roy's book, A God of Small Things. Listen to what Arundhati Roy wrote in April last year. Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists, and in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we've built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudices and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and our dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through it lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine a new world and ready to fight for it. Yes, but how? I believe that God is giving us the opportunity to find a new pathway within our community, within High Brooms, a new pathway that will speak loudly to our nation. How do we do it? Well, I believe we need to let go of the I and focus on the we. We need to work together, collaboratively. We've been given a wake-up call, so what are we going to do next? We need to make that decision and we need to act.